Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Row by Row Garden Show. Glad to have you with us this week. We're coming at you live from Norman Park, Georgia, here at Hoss Tools headquarters. I'm Travis.
And I'm Greg.
And we're super excited about this week's show. We've got our show and tell, our tool of the week. We've got the much anticipated interview we did with Bruce Frazier last week that will air in the middle of the show. And as always, we'll get to your questions at the end of the show. So if you have any questions during the show, be sure to put those in the comments and we'll be glad to answer them on next week's show. And what do we got this week?
Pickled beets.
Pickled beets.
Now I know pickled beets ain't for everybody, but I like them. And I like. Excuse me. Yeah, they make you go. I eat mine on a cracker.
Yeah.
And that little hoop cheese in there is probably pretty good too, but I was out of hoop cheese. But I like pickled beets. Look how pretty they are. They got to be good.
Where'd you get those from?
Well, let's just say I acquired them.
You acquired them?
I acquired them. We've been growing beets here for what, about a year now, pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's going to be on my to-do list is grow me and pickle me some beets this year. Now, we eat them, we boiled them, cooked them, but we ain't pickled none yet. But a friend of mine gave me them right there, and it's on my to-do list.
I like them roasted personally, but it's in the next few weeks, we'll be starting some beet transplants. There's a lot of debate out there whether you should direct seed or transplant beets. I don't have very good luck getting them to germinate well in direct seeding. So the transplanting gives me some nice greens and better consistency.
And you can also eat them greens.
You can eat them greens as well.
Yep.
Good deal. So we'll show y'all some videos hopefully coming soon on how we start those beet transplants and all that. And for our show and tell this week, we want to show y'all some of our sweet corn's long gone, and we'll be planting some fall sweet corn soon. But field corn is starting to dry out. And you got some of your favorite varieties here?
Yeah, now this year's crop. I just harvested this about a week ago and I got dry. This is my Bloody Butcher, and this is a new variety called Jimmy Red. Now I planted my Bloody Butcher first, and then I planted my Jimmy Red because I didn't want them to cross-pollinate. And the Jimmy Red is just now, you can see there, I just sacrificed this one in the morning and shut it back there where I can show it to you. And it's in what we call the milking stage, and what most people don't know is it don't turn red till it starts maturing out. So you can see there the tips of it's just starting to turn red, and as it dries out, it'll get as red or redder than what this Bloody Butcher is. I'm very excited to have this right here. I'm going to do some taste tests with it later on to see how it comes out compared to the Bloody Butcher. And you know, we may have a seed source for this next year. It's looking pretty good. So if this pans out right here, we may be able to supply you with your Jimmy Red seed corn on a limited run basis, that is.
And that right there is from seed you grew last year.
This is the open pollinated. So I saved my seed last year and planted it again. And this is the Bloody Butcher. You see, that's a dark red. Man, it's just one of my favorite corns to grow.
And that makes some excellent grits.
Yep.
Now the Jimmy Red, from out in your corn patch there, looks like it got a good bit, stalks got a good bit taller than what the Bloody Butcher did.
You know, I think so too. It's a little early to tell, but I think they got pretty tall. I got some stalks that are probably 11, 12 feet high.
Yeah. And then the ears might look a little longer too.
Yeah, but that's kind of hard to tell. We'll know more in probably about another month from now when it starts getting.
Do you expect that one to be as dark red as that one, or light?
I do. I expect it to be just as dark red. Now, I don't think as far as appearance there's going to be a whole lot of difference. They say where the difference comes is actually the taste.
And then we'll do some videos with that as well with our mock meal, our corn grinding meal that we carry now.
Yep.
Showing how to grind that up, make those grits and cornmeal. That's some good stuff, especially when it gets cold.
That's right.
All right, and then for our tool of the week this week, if you follow us on Facebook,
I'm gonna wait one more if it's okay.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Go ahead. If you follow us on Facebook or in our Row by Row group, which you should be, you might have seen a little video I posted. I had to clean up my squash patch. When we came back from Chattanooga, the squash bugs had it was gone. Anyway, so I pulled up those squash, pulled up the plants, put them in the burn pile, and you're always going to have a few weeds there left over that grew between your plants. And one of the best ways to clean those up, we've talked about our push-pull hoe in the past, but I've got where I really like this guy right here. And this is called our diamond hoe because it's shaped like a diamond. And this thing is super, super sharp on all four sides. Got a nice grind on it. And guy in Missouri makes these for us, takes a plasma cutter, cuts that blade, and puts a nice weld on there. And we warranty these heads for life.
Yeah, this is high carbon steel, so this is actually heat treated. So he gets it hard after he hand grinds these profile on there, it makes them sharp. Then heat treats it and gets the hardness up on there. So that's a very nice tool. Another thing that we do that most other people don't do, let's talk about the handle just for a second.
Go ahead.
We don't do the lacquer handles. We've switched over and we've got a source where we do these ash handles, but we do what we call a wax finish on them. Well, I like a lot better. If you leave them out in the sunlight, that old lacquer will crinkle up and start coming off and get real rough. This wax finish is a lot better to me than that old lacquer finish is. And I don't know if anybody else does that, but we have transitioned all of our tools to that wax finish here.
And that takes linseed oil really well.
Yes.
So instead of buying those tools with that varnish on them where you're going to have to sand that off every time, put some linseed on there, these things are really smooth, really receptive. A lot of people really like these handles here. So lifetime warranty on these. This thing right here for garden cleanup, going in and removing some of those weeds. A great tool right here, super sharp.
And again, made in the USA.
Made in the USA, that's right. Okay, so now to the main. Well, before we get there, let's talk a little bit about, we talked about the expo a little bit last week, and we just haven't been able to plant anything there yet.
We've been getting afternoon showers here like you wouldn't believe. It's been one of the most consistently wet years I've seen in a long time. Every week we're getting 2 or 3 showers, and it's kept us from getting in down there. That place down there is flat, it doesn't drain. It has to really dry up before we can get in there. So it's kept us from getting in there and getting some work done. So we're behind down there. Where we live, the farmers hadn't had to irrigate. It's been every week we've got afternoon showers. Everything's looking real good. It's been a weird year. It's been a good year, but it's been a little bit of a weird year.
Yeah, I got 2 inches one night earlier this week, and we got potatoes that we're ready to plant, fall potatoes, fall corn. We've got transplants in the greenhouse that are ready to go. So if it could just get dry for a few days, would give us a good break.
Yep, we need a little dry weather.
All right. So now let's get into, we want to air our interview that we did in Chattanooga with Greg and Bruce, the Onionman Frazier. Bruce is the expert on onion plants. He grows more onion plants than anybody in the country, and we think you'll really enjoy this interview.
What's up, everybody? Look who I got in the house, Bruce Onionman Frazier. Do you prefer Bruce or Onionman?
Well, either one.
It don't matter.
Yeah.
Been called worse, I've seen.
I've been called a lot.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you talk to you. So give us an idea, how many acres of onion plants you grow?
We grow around 300 acres of onion plants, somewhere around 800 million a year.
Yeah, it's a lot of onions.
It's a lot of onions.
So if somebody orders an onion plant from a seed catalog, they buy it from a big box store, chances are it comes from Texas, am I correct?
That's probably right. We probably grow 85% of the onion plants grown in the United States.
Yep. A lot of our customers talk about Dixondale onions. Everybody raves about them. Your customer service is great. Everybody loves the catalog they get. So let's talk a little bit about the short day and the long day, because that's a little confusing to me.
Okay, well, when you're talking variety selection, there's really 3 classifications: short day, intermediate day, and long day. Short day onions, when you think about onions the way they grow the top, and then depending upon day length, number of hours, and heat units the onions acquired, it transfers the carbohydrates that are in the leaves to the rings of onions. So short days, that process begins when the day length reaches 10 to 12 hours. Intermediate days are 12 to 14, and long days are 14 to 16. When you think about it in the southern states, you don't reach 16 hours of day length.
No, we don't.
At the equator, you have 12 hours of day length all the time. So the farther north you go, In the spring into the summer, the days get longer.
Okay. So if somebody calls in to order onion plants from you, all they got to do is tell you where they're at. Y'all could match the zip code up to their zone and make sure they get the right onion to grow in that area, because you can't grow any onion in any area.
If you grow a long day variety in the south, in the southern states where you don't get that trigger, all it's going to do is going to make top, and never bulb out. If you take a short day variety and you plant in the long day areas, that bulbing process, by the time you can plant, it's not going to have very long to grow many leaves before it starts that bulbing process.
Right.
So it's going to bulb, but you're going to make a ping pong ball or a tennis ball instead of making a big 4-inch juicy onion.
So we all like to make them big old onions.
That's right.
Well, so tell me some of the key points in growing onions. First of all, make sure you got the right variety for where you live at.
That's right.
Let's talk about fertilizer.
Okay, onions, basically, initially, they just need a balance. Okay, and we recommend like a 10-20-10 ratio, something with there. The nitrogen is not as important initially as the phosphorus and the potassium are. Phosphorus and potassium are what encourages root development. And once you have a good root system, then you can take up the nitrogen
and get the growth.
Yep. Nitrogen makes foliage. Green foliage, the more leaves, the more rings. The perfect onion has 13 rings.
Hold on. Let's back up for a minute. Talk about the perfect onion and the rings. Explain what you're talking about there.
So you're looking for 13 leaves. When that 13th leaf, if you think about it, if you can grow a leaf about once every 10 days to 2 weeks, you're going to get about 3 or 4 leaves from us. So in about 90 days to 100 days, the bulbing process is probably going to begin. Okay? So the key is to provide the nitrogen, provide them the feed, and then if it's warmer, they're going to generate a new leaf more often. Okay? A cold winter, you're going to maybe not generate as many leaves.
It may take a little longer in the growing season.
That's right.
So we can talk about per acre or per 1,000 square feet. Give me a nitrogen requirement, potassium requirement, or whatever per acre or per 1,000. Let's just do per acre and we can break it down. So give me a nitrogen requirement. What, over the period of time from when I plant that onion to I harvest it, how much nitrogen should I have to use?
Yeah, it should be around 160 to 200 units of nitrogen.
So around 4 pounds per 1,000.
Right.
Somewhere there. How about potassium, phosphorus?
Potassium and phosphorus are probably about a tenth of that in the probably 20 to 50. If you put them down initially and you put it and you chisel it or you get it close to the root zone, it won't take a lot. It just needs that initially.
So we plant the onion and we put a good balanced fertilizer down to start with. Then we come back and we're going to hit it with some nitrogen.
Yeah, that's right.
Ammonium nitrate, chilean nitrate, whatever.
Right. It basically, if you soil is sandy, you have high pH, or clay soils and higher pH. That you want to use sulfates because that's going to lower your pH. Ideally, pH of onions is around the 6.5 to 6.8. So sulfates will lower pH. Your nitrates, which is more in Georgia, and the acidic. If you got pine trees, you probably need nitrate.
Yeah. So you want the ideal pH between 6.5 and 7 for onions?
Yes.
Somewhere in that neighborhood there. So we've always heard, and it may be a myth, that onions take a lot of sulfur, elemental sulfur. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. But what makes people say, "Oh, sulfur is going to make the onion hot"?
Yeah.
Well, what makes the onion hot is how much water's in it.
Okay.
Okay. What makes an onion rot is how much water's in it. So you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You can't have a sweet onion that's going to store a long time. But if you wanted to make an onion store longer, you'd maybe possibly add a little more sulfur to it, to where the cell structure doesn't have as much water.
We're talking about sulfur, we're talking about elemental sulfur.
Right.
Something that you can just side dress with, or you can spray on there.
That's right.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about varieties just a little bit. So one of the favorite varieties that we like to grow from Dixondale is the Texas Legend.
Okay.
And we'd like to grow some red onion too. We've grown the Creole before. But they don't store as well for us, but we like them because they're just a little bit different. They got a little taste to them. They just look good.
A little pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us what you recommend. What's your favorite varieties?
Well, the Texas Legend, the good thing about that is basically how they developed the Vidalia onion was they crossed a Bermuda with the 1015 or the Grano. It was the 502 Grano. So you had a thick, flat, and Bermudas were really thin, and then you got the roundness.
Right.
The good thing about Texas Legend is you're getting the top half of the onion.
Right.
If you're growing them, you might as well grow the top half too.
Yeah.
So you can get twice as much onion than the Granex or the Bermuda, which are flat.
So you like the Texas Legend?
I like
As all around.
That's right.
Okay.
And all around in the South, in the intermediate day varieties. In fact, even in your area, some of the, if you think about back to the short days, that's 10 to 12 hours. The intermediates are 12 to 14. Well, there's some intermediates that are at that 12. So is it a short intermediate day or a long short day?
Right.
So if you can get them down to the candy is probably our biggest seller, and it's an
That's the
intermediate.
red onion.
It's a yellow onion.
A yellow onion.
Yeah, we have red candy and we have candy.
I'm confusing it with the red candy.
Right.
So I think that's what we're.
But red candies are on the short end of intermediate day,
Okay.
so they can grow almost anywhere that a short day onion is also.
Well, let's talk about the reds. Which one do you like the best as far as the reds?
Well, we're sort of particular with red candy because that's our exclusive.
Okay.
Okay. That red onion seed is extremely difficult to produce. They bolt usually fairly easy, where the red candy is probably the most bolt resistant variety I've ever seen. And that's the reason seed companies don't want to produce it, because it's so hard to produce the seed because it won't bolt.
Right.
We have to plant it 2 years, make it a 3-year process versus 2-year process.
To get seed. So what's new at Dixondale?
Well, we introduced shallots last year with maybe the local farmers market adding something new. We have leeks.
Now shallots, I'm not familiar with shallots.
Well,
Is that the deal where you pull them and they look real small and you sell the green part with them and you bunch them up, sell them in the farmer's market?
No.
Okay.
Shallots look like almost like pink garlic cloves almost.
Okay.
They only grow fairly small, but they're.
I was thinking about leeks. Is it leeks?
Leeks.
Okay.
Leeks are the ones that look like big, long green onions,
Okay.
about the size of a
We don't
baseball
eat a
bat.
lot of shallots and leeks in South Georgia. Not saying we shouldn't, but we don't.
Well, you don't cook enough soups because you don't get covered.
I guess not.
Yeah, but that's the most of the leeks and the shallots are northern delicacies, and people that are maybe high-end restaurant chefs like to go with shallots. I don't know why they wouldn't eat an onion, but they want the leeks and the shallots.
Yeah.
Leeks are pretty good on the grill.
Yeah.
And I know y'all barbecue.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah.
You just sprinkle a little, just a little oil on them, put them on the grill. Pretty tasty.
So the key here is if you're interested in shallots or leeks or onions, make sure you get the right variety. And you can do that by dealing directly with y'all. You got awesome customer service. You can tell them what variety they need to plant, and also you can tell them when they need to plant it.
That's right, and that's the key. Is they're going to be one of the first things you can get in their garden. That potatoes, and so let's try to.
I find a lot of people plant onions at the wrong time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if that day length trigger is going to be about the same time.
Yeah.
The earlier you get them in, the more time, the bigger the onion's going to be.
Yeah. So it's www.dixondalefarms.com.
You got it.
All right. Thank you much.
Thank you.
So I hope you all enjoyed that interview. Bruce is a good friend of ours, and like you could tell from the video footage there, really good expert on onions. And if you ever have any questions, you can definitely give those guys a call.
Yeah, if you're interested in growing onions and you want to do something just a little bit different, you really need to consider ordering some plants from them. And one thing I really like about them is their customer service. Mary runs their call center. A lot of times Bruce is sitting in the call center and he helps answer phone calls too. So if you got any questions, any concerns, man, they're Johnny on the spot about handling customer service, handling any of your problems, or answering any of your questions. So customer support, product support is a big thing with them, and I really appreciate that.
And like y'all mentioned a little bit in the video there, one of the biggest things we see is people plant their onions too late. And then when it comes time to harvest, they want to know why they don't have a big onions.
Yeah.
If you live in the South like we do, you need to be planting them onions in early November.
It's very important to plant the right variety at the right time. And they've got some videos on their website that alludes to that fact and gives you some information of what varieties you need to plant when. So you probably need to check that out if you've had problems planting onions before.
Yeah, and like Bruce said, the more top you can grow early, the bigger the bulb you're going to get towards the end of the life cycle of that onion. All right, so let's get to some of our questions this week. And our two people that we're answering questions for this week are going to be the happy recipients of one of our fancy little Hoss hats here.
Yep.
So if y'all will send us your address to cussserve@hosstools.com, we'll get you a hat out. And then for next week, we'll be giving away some more koozies for people who we answer questions on next week's show.
So our first question comes from a guy named Philip Hall. And Philip says, how to keep weeds out of the areas where they outgrow the small seeded plants like lettuce and carrots. You know, that can be a tough one.
Yeah, on things, especially with carrots, you see it sometimes with beets a little bit, things that take a while to germinate. Your weeds can outpace them if you don't have a completely sterile or stale seed bed. And so there's a couple options you can do here, but they have to be timed correctly. So what some people will do is they'll plant their bed of carrots, and then about 2 days later, because them carrots are going to take a week or two to come up.
Yeah.
About a couple days later, they'll come and flame weed the top of that bed, and that's going to kill any of those little small thread-like weeds that are starting to germinate. Another technique I've seen used is using these things called wire weeders that are just these little rakes with a bunch of tiny tines on them, and they'll run those over the beds and kill any of those emerging weeds. With both of those, timing is very important. You don't want to kill the carrots when they start to emerge, but you want to do it after you plant but before your crops come through the ground.
Yeah, another thing too, on things like lettuce, we talked about beets, things like that you can transplant is my preferred method of doing it because it gives you a heads up on those small weeds. Now carrots is one of those things that does not transplant, and you're just going to have to direct seed them and use some of these techniques we talked about to get them up and going. But anything that I can transplant, I like to do that, and it seem to have a lot better results with that.
With carrots and with mixed greens, one of my strategies is to get that weed seed bed as depleted as I can before I plant. So I'll wheel hoe that area 2 or 3 times a week for several weeks before I plant and get it nice and clean. And that way they don't have to compete with those small weeds so much.
Yeah, once you get that seed planted, keep it watered, keep everything just right for it to germinate so it can get it and out-compete with those weeds.
Yeah, and plant them thick, and that way you'll have some shade canopy there and you won't have near as much competition.
Yep.
And our second question this week comes from David Armstrong, and he wants to know what's the best cover crop for heavy clay-based soil.
Yeah, those clay-based soils can be tough to garden in. There's a couple of things out there. One of them's called a radish, a daikon.
Right.
Is that pronounced?
Daikon radish.
Daikon radish. And also there's some turnips out there that you use for cover crops. Now these radishes I grew a few years ago, and man, them things get huge.
Yeah, the daikons are not globe-shaped radishes; they're the long cylindrical ones.
And these things got huge, and what they're good for is going down into the soil and breaking up that hard pan and adding organic matter to that clay soils. Works well with sandy soils too, but it actually has more benefit to clay-like soils. So definitely think about cover crops, but when you think about cover crops, use those root cover crops instead of the things like rye and things like that, and that can help you bust up hard pan, add that organic matter to the soil there, and gives you a little more substance to it when you go to try to till it in, and you can get those soils good and healthy.
Right, and those daikons almost work like a broad fork. They just go down there, kind of aerate that, break that up. You can also use purple top turnips.
Yep.
And in doing that, if you have any livestock, any goats or any chickens, if you can, once you grow that cover crop out, if you can let your animals in there on it to eat it down and to dig up those roots, you're just gonna, exponentially get more benefit out of that
means
cover
you're gonna
crop.
get more benefit. Yeah.
And so root cover crops, radishes, purple top turnips, and if you can, put some animals on it once they grow out.
And anytime you can add good compost to those clay soils, that's a good thing too.
Always. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this week's show, and we'll see you next week.